Leadership law number 1, the law of the lid. You're the problem, you're the solution. Today on the Do Hard Things Today podcast. Welcome back to the Do Hard Things Today podcast. This is episode 107. We are starting a leadership series. Leadership, one of the pioneers of leadership. Almost everybody listening to this podcast has probably listened to or read a book by John C. Maxwell. He has written his many books, but what I believe that the best book he's ever written is called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I'm actually taking our leadership team in my business through this right now, and we had an idea to be able to interact better with them as well as bring this information to others because I believe it's so valuable. And so what we're going to do, we're going to bring you one of these every week as we're doing our own leadership development. We're going to bring you a podcast discussing each law. It'll be about a 15-minute podcast, but we wanted to be able to just bring this information to you because we feel like it's so valuable. So we're going to jump right into this. I've got two people with me, Bonnie Blackwell, who leads one of our retail locations over in the Greenville area, and then we have Jed Blackwell, who oversees all of our online and marketing inside of our company. So they're a part of our leadership team, but they've also got some really good insights that they bring from other areas. And so we're going to have an interaction, and we will bring different people on during some of these weeks to be able to talk about some of the struggles, some of the things that we're good at, some of the things we're bad at, to be able to help you through that. And so as we open this book and this discussion, I want to frame it with there are going to be 21 things that we cover. Nobody is really good at all of these. There are going to be some of these that we go over that you're going to say, man, I am knocking it out of the park and on that particular law or attribute of leadership. There's also going to be some that you're going to look and say, man, I really struggle in this area. I hope that through this series, we're able to make you a little bit uncomfortable at times. That's including myself, because when you get uncomfortable, that's really when you start growing. And so ask yourself some of these hard questions and figure out how you can be the absolute best leader that you can be for your team as well as for yourself. This could go into your family, into your professional life, your personal life, whatever that may be. So we're going to talk about leadership law number 1. John Maxwell calls this the law of the lid. How well you lead determines how well you succeed. And I have another quote, and it's this: leadership ability is the lid that determines a person's level of effectiveness. The lower an individual's ability to lead, the lower the lid on his or her potential. The higher the individual's ability to lead, the higher the lid on his or her potential. So this concept of the lid, Jed, I'll go to you first. Is this something you had ever been exposed to, or what? When we start talking about the lid, how did you interpret that, or how did you interact with that the first time you saw it?
The first place I'd ever read it in this context was in this book. But yes, I have interacted with the lid in a very negative way in the past. I worked for, I'm not going to name names, but I worked for the largest media corporation in the United States for several years. And it became larger when I was working there. And leadership, at least at the level that I was exposed to it, was so constricted and so hampered by rigid decisions made at the level above them that's led me to be on this podcast today. Some of those decisions were not in line with the things that I agreed with. Some of them were not in line with best market practices. They were applying things across the board that needed to be localized. So yeah, I had seen the lid. I had seen it not work. I had seen people just say, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. So that's what they said to do. So this is how I'm going to do it. I couldn't put a name on it until I read the first chapter in this book. And I'm like, okay, all right. I know 50 people I need to send this book to, but I'm not in a position to do that anymore. I know, I think I'm going to benefit from reading this because leadership is not a strong suit for me. I knew a guy who was a sergeant in the Battle of the Bulge. So the worst fighting the world had seen up to that point. He was allowed to lead, but not allowed to make any decisions, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Classic middle staff sergeant's a classic middle manager. You can lead, but you can't make any important decisions. And Mr. High and I would talk, and he said one time he was telling a corporal something to do. He said, hey, when you get done with that, how about you go over here and whatever? He said his captain told him, hey, don't ever let me hear you say how about again. You tell him what to do. And Paul said that's not the way, that didn't click in his mind. I'm a how about guy. Hey, when you get done with that, let's go over here and do this. I need to make some more effective decisions, but I don't think you go do this now is the way to lead. And that's reinforcing this a little bit.
Yeah, and it's when I think about a lid, have you ever felt with the leaders that you've been under, for lack of a better term, has that lid ever pressed down on you?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's something important here as we lay this context. And some of the things that Jed just referenced over this 21 weeks and these 21 laws, we'll cover all of those different things of how you communicate, all these others. We're laying the groundwork here on this law of the lid of you establishing the importance and how paramount leadership is and doing that right and understanding that it does not matter how well of a manager you are, how well of a finger pointer of telling people what to do, how well of a dictator you are, that everything's going to live and die with your leadership ability. And if your leadership ability is if your lid on a scale of 1 to 10 is an 8, the maximum effectiveness you'll ever have will be a 7. If your leadership ability, your lid is a 4, the maximum you're going to have is going to be a 3. So when we talk about this lid, this is one of those things that can press down or it can uplift. Bonnie, let's go to you. How did you interacting with this? You've been a professional for a long time. Mm-hmm. How have, when you read this chapter for the first time, how did you take it?
I had actually never heard of the law of the lid before, but as I read it, I was like, oh, okay, I've worked for people in the past who were not good leaders. They wouldn't let us, I was always told, this is what you're going to do. That had always been well, this is what you're going to do today. This is what you're going to do today. And I was like, couldn't make any decisions I always had to ask before I could do anything. Then I came to work for you, and that was a completely different experience. I will never forget, it was not long after you had put me in position to be store manager over at the Malden store. How many times would I call you or text you with a question?
A lot.
It was a lot. And finally, one day you said, I put you in this position to make these decisions. You don't have to call me. And I'm, well, what if I make the wrong one? And you're like, well, it'll be okay. If it's the wrong decision, we will look at why it was wrong. And then next time you will make a better decision.
And we talked about it. How uncomfortable did that make you?
Very, very uncomfortable, because in the past it had always been, well, if you make the wrong decision, you're not going to have a job anymore. So you get terrified of making that decision. So not only did I have to learn that it's okay to make a wrong decision, I had to learn how to fix what I did wrong, and then also learn to lead the people up under me. Y'all, it's okay for y'all to make decisions as well. Making mistakes is okay.
Yeah, well, how much of your time, and I would ask this of people that are in any kind of leadership position, and just about everybody is in some kind of leadership position. Do you spend more time determining how you're going to manage your team, or how much time you're going to spend leading your team? See, most companies, we've all been a part of them, and we're definitely not experts at this, but we are getting better at this in our company. But most companies, they ignore leadership development, and they focus on technical training, systems, and processes. They just focus on, Jed, you referenced that. You're managing the systems and processes. You're managing the technical training, but there's no leadership development. There's no looking at people and saying, hey, I believe that this person has the ability to grow. And sometimes we put these things in a box and we say a dynamic leader is someone who is standing up in front of people and is the loudest. And that's not what it is. Leadership is about influence. In the next law, we'll talk about influence, but it is about influencing and making other people better. And ironically, the things that people in charge generally want, which is results. Ironically, if you develop people and invest in people, the results are going to come.
In corporate America, though, there's very little advancement due to leadership ability or merit, and more advancement due to doing the things the way the company wants them done, and just kind of going along and nodding. That in the corporate America I've been exposed to anyway, falling in line was rewarded more than trying to lead.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to get my mind around the opposite.
Yeah. Who sells more hamburgers than anybody in the world?
McDonald's.
No, McDonald's. Who benefited the most from an early time period? Where did McDonald's come from? They just, all of a sudden, there's McDonald's everywhere, Jed?
It came from the McDonald brothers in, I want to say Glendale, California, but I might be wrong. They were really good at making hamburgers really fast, the same way, every time, and selling them for fairly cheap. And they were happy to be doing that.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden, the McDonald's brothers, they're making really good hamburgers. And so they just opened stores all over the world, right?
No.
So what happened?
That was a businessman named Ray Kroc who saw and we, on our leadership call on Monday, I said that I consider him the second most influential American businessman behind Henry Ford.
Yeah.
He saw the potential of going to your city or a city you were visiting or a city you were working in and ordering a McDonald's hamburger and getting the same McDonald's hamburger that you could get in Glendale, California, in exactly the same manner at the same amount of time, roughly, every time you ordered it. He saw the genius in that and petitioned the McDonald's brothers to start franchising.
We talked about this beforehand, Bonnie, and you made the comment. It was like, I don't think it's fair that the McDonald's brothers only got this amount of money, and Ray Kroc ended up being the person who benefited the most from it. And we had a little discussion on that and I asked the question, I said, well, whose fault is that?
It was the McDonald's brothers' fault.
What did the McDonald's brothers, what did they lack?
They lacked the leadership and the vision to really see the potential of what they were doing.
Well, and I think they were complacent too. They were happy making the money that they were making, selling the cheeseburgers that they were selling in the way that they were accustomed to.
Yeah, and you can fall into that. That's a good point, because it's, if you're making hamburgers and you're making a good solid hamburger and you're making a good living doing this, why are you worried about doing other things? You kind of get to that point where you stop. Those visionary leaders, when you look throughout history of people who have really been these visionary, they always have that vision and they're always moving forward and inspiring. He didn't tell the whole story in the book about Ray Kroc, but he really inspired the group of people as he started to franchise these things. He inspired those people to be able to go in and do, and people would see their McDonald's as their own business,
right?
As their own business. So, that's something that as we have looked, when we talk about inside of our company, our leaders tell them to, you treat your own individual store like its own business. You're running a business. You're leading those people. You're inspiring them. Don't spend so much time now, you do have to manage and you do have to lead. Those things are not mutually exclusive. It's not, I'm either a manager or I'm a leader. You have to manage things. But I always talk about, we want to manage systems and processes, but we're going to lead people. People don't want to be managed. They want to be led. Processes don't care if you lead them or not. Systems and processes want to be, those are the things that have to be managed. So when we look at how can we set the context and what are a few things we can do, I think the number one thing, and I want y'all to chime in on these as we go, but I think the number one thing is you have to believe in and recognize the importance of leadership. Leadership is one of those words that gets thrown around a lot. It's like everybody wants to be a leader. Well, I've often said everybody wants to be in charge till it's time to do in charge stuff, and I think you've got to believe that it's very important, no matter what role I'm in, that I recognize leadership's role of how that's going to allow myself and whatever team that you have the opportunity to influence to be able to raise them up. Number two, I would say you've got to commit to developing your own personal leadership. This is going to be a journey you're on. If you'll listen to these podcasts and read it, get the book, go buy the book, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, follow along. You will be making a commitment to upping your game of leadership. And again, it will be uncomfortable at times. There's going to be times you have to look in the mirror and say, where am I failing? Where am I good? Where am I maybe not being a good leader? Commit to that leadership journey, and then understand that it's a growth process. And like I just said, the process will be uncomfortable. And the last thing is understanding that some people say, well, you're just a born leader. You're either born with it or you don't have it. And while there are some attributes that people will be born with, leadership's a learnable trait. It is learnable. You can learn how to be a better leader, and you can discipline yourself to be a better leader. So what are you guys' thoughts as we wrap this first one up?
I think it's definitely something that I'm going to learn. I'm going to have to learn. But you're right. Nobody wants to be managed all the time. The best boss I've had in journalism would frequently say, this is how we're supposed to do it. And that's stupid. So we're going to do it this way.
Yeah.
Because though he would go through the system and processes, he knew that we couldn't be beholden to them all the time when they didn't work in our market. And he would take the heat with his boss when we did it a different way. He also pushed back against some things, like on our evaluations, we were always 3 was meets expectations. We were all the 4 people in our department were 4s and 5s across the board most of the time, except for honesty, and we all got a 3, meets expectations. And his point was, he can't be more honest than we expect him to be. And if he's not honest, why is he working here? He'd never give anything above a 3. Yeah. And he got questioned on it every year, and his answer was the same every year. To me, that's a little bit of leadership too, pushing back against things that don't make sense, and trying to implement things that do make sense. So I'm excited to learn some new things and to try to grow a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the things that you do well as a leader is put us out of our comfort zone. When I came to work at Harrison's, I was not a leader. If I had been in a management position, I was more of a boss. Those are 2 completely different things, being a leader and being a boss. And you would always say, I would hear people say, well, that's the way Kevin wants it done. I'm like, well, I don't feel like that's the right way. And you've always told me, if you don't think it's the right way, let's talk about it. Question me on it. Maybe there's a better way to do it. Come to find out, you had done it all of those different ways, and your way was probably the easiest way to do it. But we were allowed to question those things and learn from it. One of my goals in my store is as we open more stores, I want the people in my store that work under me to always be considered to being a store manager in a different store. If that is the case, then I'm doing my job as a leader and leading them, because nothing will make me happier than seeing those people progress up to that leadership position. And I think sometimes people that are put in leadership positions, and they're more of a boss than a leader, they don't get the satisfaction from seeing the members of their team grow. It's more about me and what I'm doing, and not about seeing the success of the people up under me.
Well, a lot of that is because somebody that's not leading but is just managing feels threatened by somebody possibly eclipsing what they can do.
Yeah. I always want to be having to hire new retail sales associates, because the ones that have been working in my store have gone on to better things.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what that's a very important point, because you want to elevate those. And part of this journey that we'll get to in some of these laws is where you're vulnerable. And especially if you're in a key leadership position, the vulnerability of knowing that, man, the people that supposedly, quote unquote, work under me or for me, they're better at a whole lot of stuff than I am. And I've had to look at that. I mean, there's things that all of the leadership team that I get to serve with, all of them are going to be better at some things than I am, and that's okay. And being vulnerable enough as a leader to be able to let other people grow. And again, ironically, what that's going to do is that's going to continue to raise your leadership lid as you grow and progress through this journey. So, yeah, I mean, this starts the journey. The Law of the Lid. Again, go get the book, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. You can download it on Audible or however you want to listen to it, or get you I love a good hard copy book like this to be able to go through. We've got those. Our entire team has those that we're going through. So I hope this is something that brings benefit to you. We'll bring you one of these every week, just a leadership series, as we're doing some more business development type things with the podcast, along with the personal development items. But the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, the Law of the Lid, that's what we've covered today. Next week, we will be talking about influence, and it is the second one we come to. And Jed has already talked about a couple of the things that go along with influence in that law. We'll bring that again to you next week. Until then, just want to remind you, whether it's business, personal, whatever it is that you deal with or involved in, if you'll do the hard things today, tomorrow will take care of itself.